Good evening, everyone. To be honest, we're still waiting for our speaker tonight to arrive, but we're going to get some of the introduction information out of the way, and if he's still a little bit late arriving, perhaps traffic slowing him down, we'll kick over into kind of an open Q&A until he arrives. We do have pizza later on tonight to feed you, so please hang in here. We also have lots of prizes. But I'm imagining that Alan's probably not too far off. So let's kick off with the agenda. There we go. So our agenda tonight, if it works out this way, we're starting at 6:15. We have a few quick announcements. Alan Taylor, the first person to publish a book on developing for HoloLens, is going to be here tonight and sharing his experiences about what he learned over that process. We have a whole bunch of door prizes, and we have a couple of HoloLenses here that if anybody is interested in trying it out for the first time or checking something out, we make them available for demos and interaction at the end. Pizza, all that type of interaction, and typically we clear out of here by 9. So each month I try to jot down a few things that I've noticed that have happened during the previous month that pertain particularly to our space. Obviously in AR, VR, mixed reality, there's a ton of stuff going on right now, so I could make an entire evening out of updating your news event, but I try to focus on things that are Windows holographic or HoloLens specific. So probably one of the most interesting things that has happened since we met last is Microsoft has finally made something publicly available for broadcasting the HoloLens experience from outside of a HoloLens. We've all seen the demos that they've done on stage with Alex Kipman and all the other cool stuff that looks really interesting. It's a third-person view of what's happening. You see the person with the HoloLens, you see the holograms themselves. And devs on the forums have been asking for ages, how do I take and do something on my own so that I can show my customers, I can create a live experience, etc. So Microsoft has released a app and a design kit to do the whole bracketing and everything else that's involved in hooking up to a real DLSR or to a GoPro, and the whole instruction set of how to get that into the PC through a video capture. It's called Spectator View, and it's all available online now, so if that's something that interests you, it's fairly involved, and you have to put out a few bucks for a couple of pieces if you don't already have them. You'll also have to, if you're using the bracket as described, you'll have to do a little dissecting on your HoloLens to make it happen, which may make some people queasy. But you can also do a non-bracketed version as well, where you just basically sit it above the camera.
Alan's here, he's just in the restroom.
Great, excellent. Along with that, there was a rumor this last month, and I haven't heard anything confirmed yet from anybody official at Microsoft, but the rumor has it that HoloLens 2 as a device is being skipped. They possibly were close or somewhere along the line on HoloLens 2, and they, for some reason or another, according to this rumor, have decided to skip that and move on to HoloLens 3. Some of the rumors spin it as that they feel that they're comfortably far enough ahead, so as opposed to an incremental step onto 2, it might make sense to go for a more impactful HoloLens 3 experience, which nobody knows what that necessarily means, or nobody that's speaking publicly about it. Unity 5.6 beta released is a bullet that somehow got left over from, got interrupted today, and so this is a mixture of bullets from last month and this month. 5.6 beta has been released previous month. GDC, there was an interesting announcement where the mixed reality dev kit has been officially announced. Acer, they showed off a prototype device. Sounds like some of the GDC attendees are going to get early dibs on some of those kits, and sounds like they're appealing to the gaming community. We all can take and apply. There's a bit of an application process online for you to go through, similar to what you did for the HoloLens. Based on the questions that I read going through, it looks like they are looking for folks that have some previous VR experience, possibly some games and other things that you can apply to that space. So it sounded like these devices are going to be in the hands at the end of this month, early next month, so you'll start to see these types of devices available shortly, which is really, really exciting. Windows Holographic apparently has now been renamed to Windows Mixed Reality. So WinHUGR is now WinMUGR. But we are not planning on changing the group's name at any point in time in the immediate future. So we're going to stick with WinHUGR and Windows Holographic, even though that may be in a different direction than they're going with their name game and the marketing pool. Holo Toolkit Unity package for 2017 is going on to, or the goal is to put the Holo Toolkit onto a regular monthly release schedule where the first week of each month they're going to start baking a version of the Holo Toolkit and stamping that so that it's a little more trackable and stable from a standpoint of what version are you working with. So that's a little bit of the background news. Anybody in the, it's been a busy month and it's been busy also for me. Does anybody in the audience know of anything else that might be holographic specific?
Yeah, so with the new Unity release, I think it was just 5.6 consumer, they made a lot of changes to how the virtual reality supported checkbox was there with the added SDKs. Makes it way easier to build for multiple devices, including HoloLens. So that's useful.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, we've had good luck sharing the HoloLens view in real time, not using spectator view when we saw that, but if you use the app, the Windows HoloLens app, instead of the device portal, you turn the laptop into a hotspot, you link to the hotspot on the laptop that's running the app, then we can share in near real time across WebEx, and we demo a lot like that in Boeing. Oh no.
That's cool. This is another alternative if performance is starting to lag you in that mixed reality streaming mode. Any other things that came up this month that you think are noteworthy? We have another guest here with us, which normally we wouldn't. Jonathan, where did Jonathan go? There you are. Jonathan's sitting right in front of me. I'm going to ask Jonathan to come up and tell you a little bit about himself. He's kind of connected to tonight's speaker. He works for A-Press. And you may recall a couple months ago, three or 4 months ago, I put out a call that if anybody was looking to write a book on HoloLens, that I had a contact that you might want to reach out to. Well, let me introduce you to Jonathan.
Wayne, thank you for that. I don't want to take too much time. I'm just really pretty excited to be out here, actually. I have a kind of a strong interest in VR and AR. It's a field I learned about a couple years ago. And just some very exciting things are happening, and wanting to be a part of it personally. I do work for a book publisher, so my way of kind of being involved is to look for people to write books around the technologies, right? Not just HoloLens itself, but the bigger picture, right? Holographic design, mixed reality, that whole area. Lots of interesting things happening. So just kind of want to plant that seed. If you're ever struck with the idea that you have something to say to the broader community, I'd love to talk to you about it. And just in general, I'm very excited to be here, and really excited that our author Alan Taylor could be here. He published the first ever book on the HoloLens, so that's pretty cool. And I'm excited to hear what he has to say. Wayne, I think that's all I have.
Great.
Don't want to monopolize the time. Thank you so much.
So we're just going to give Alan a moment or two here to get his presentation set up. Can I get a quick show of hands as to how many people own a HoloLens or have access to a HoloLens device? Cool. So it's growing definitely in the numbers. How many people in the audience have never experienced or worn a HoloLens? Decent number. Okay. I see one guy putting his hand up for both. Is that, or is he? Okay, cool. And how many people are also deving on some other VR, AR platform? Okay, cool. What platform?
HTC 5.
5?
Samsung Gear.
Gear?
Oculus.
Oculus? Exclusively just the Rift, not a...
No, and Drive.
Okay. Yeah, you didn't want to be boastful. I get that. Thanks. All right, cool. So, chill for a minute and relax, and we're going to have Alan for you here shortly.
Wait.
Yes.
Is there any chance of getting someone who can talk about, at some point, who can talk about the non-AR Windows tech that's coming into the goggles and how that's going to be different or how that's going to be the same from what we have?
Okay, so for those folks at home that didn't hear that over the mic, the question was, is it possible for us to get somebody in to talk about the rest of the platform that I've been all excited about, besides HoloLens, the mixed reality VR devices and the Project Tango reference design platform. There's basically those two different directions that have been publicly talked about so far. And he extended the question to also ask as far as what's the difference when you're developing an app for the HoloLens versus the other platforms. During GDC, I believe there was a quick talk that walked through our demo that walked through basically taking a HoloLens app, going in and adding a skybox and a couple of quick settings to that app. It was basically just kind of a few extra things that you, one, would configure, and two, because of the difference in the experience, you would have to take into account. You wouldn't use a skybox in a HoloLens typically, but you would in a VR scenario. So they have publicly mentioned that. To the best of my knowledge, Microsoft is still being pretty quiet. They want to, I believe, control the information that's going to come out about this. So we're now 2 months away from Build, and we have Build happening in Seattle this year. So I anticipate that by May 15th or so, we'll know an awful lot more that will be publicly available through that possible channel. Also, there, in case anybody is not aware, Unity has an annual conference, now annual because they had it last year as well, called the Vision Summit, Vision AR, VR, and I think they now have XR as their approach to mixed reality scenarios. The Vision Summit is happening in LA the week before Build. So I'm guessing there's a whole bunch of stuff in the next couple months that's going to start to bubble up. Believe me, I keep knocking and asking, but I haven't found anybody yet. And if anybody in the crowd, since we are Redmond based, if there's anybody that knows somebody or is somebody that can start to talk about this, I've reached out because of some of the guys in the crowd, connections to a guy at Intel. So we now have a connection to Intel that is working with the Alloy device. Was it? No, it wasn't Joe. It was somebody that I should know off the tip of my tongue is not coming to me. Somebody found something downtown Seattle one day that was connected with an Intel guy doing the Project Alloy. He had a device with him. I'd love to have that device come in and be shown around and talk about. But it's a very strategic time, so a lot of them are being a little bit reluctant that way. Yes. Sorry, I got two of them.
I just wanted to add to the,
yes,
the question that was just asked. I just been consulting in the HoloLens team, and to the best of my knowledge, from what I've heard, the Acer announcement is really the point of the spear as far as mixed reality devices.
Yes.
The other announced OEMs, Dell and HP and Lenovo, are still working out the hardware designs. So we won't see hardware for a while, and Microsoft's best guess, as I understand it right now, for developer evangelism for mixed reality is really cranking up more in the summer. Okay. So I'll keep my finger on that pulse, and if I can speak or someone else there can speak, come over and speak about it, we will. But right now, there's not a big evangelism effort yet.
And I believe there was one other device that they brought on board late, the Chinese device.
Right, there was one.
And that one already exists, but they probably have to re-rig it to have the sensors or something for a mixed reality experience. Not sure. So, cool. Good. Anybody else?
No, so I think something newsworthy is also the latest insider build of Windows. You can actually go into the mixed reality portal, and I posted a video on YouTube. You can check it out if you want. But it's really cool. So instead of having the transparent display where you put stuff in your real world, you actually see a virtual house. But the headsets are, they have these sensors so that it prevents you from, bumping into real actual walls. So everything else looks exactly like it does in the HoloLens. You still have your moon gesture, you still have your apps, the Windows Store. You can pin Edge to the walls. You can have the, all your holographic apps. It's just instead of seeing your real house, you see a virtual house when you wear these devices. So pretty cool.
Excellent point, Sean. Sorry for those people at home that I forgot to run the mic out here. Sean's point was that the Insider build has a mixed reality portal piece to it, and I should have added that because it's something I was dabbling with this month as well. Go in, poke around. It doesn't do an awful lot, but there are a whole bunch of settings, and it gives you kind of a preview into what is coming on Windows 10 as part of the creator's build. And the previous question or previous comment was extending what I had said earlier, because one of the guys is working close with one of the teams, and he believes that Acer is the one device that is going to be early out and available, that the other manufacturers are still working, and they're probably not going to have hardware until later in the summer. Alan, are you about ready? With no further ado, I'm going to pass the mic over to Alan Taylor, who is the gentleman who's published the first HoloLens device, or HoloLens development book on the market, and I don't think I've seen anything else that's hit the shelves yet either. So you may be the only at this point. Would you like to handhold, or you can also, I'm going to switch the slide deck over to you.
Sure. I'll try it by hand.
Anticipating that. There we go. Excellent.
There we went.
Did I press too many?
Yeah, we're back.
Take it away, Alan.
Okay. Well, thank you, Dwayne. It's great to be here in front of all you Redmondians. I ran into a little traffic driving up from Portland, and so that's why I was a little bit late. Well, Microsoft HoloLens. Here it is, early 2017. Microsoft introduced the product to the world at Build in 2015. So we're 2 years on from that. And I didn't attend Build. I didn't get in the first 30 seconds of signups. But I watched the videos, and I was blown away by that. And I'm sure that a lot of you were too when you first saw it. There were some pretty amazing things that were on the stage there at Build, like, for instance, this one. And another early focus that they really highlighted at Build was games. And here we see some Minecraft, and here we see some Robo Raid, which was called Project X at the beginning. But it wasn't long before they came to the realization that probably games were not going to be the first place that HoloLens was going to make a real impact. The $3,000 price for the developer kit had a lot to do with that. And when you look at what it costs for the device itself, as opposed to the extra goodies that you get in the developer kit, most of that cost is in the device itself. And so it's going to be an expensive device. And there aren't that many gamers that are in a position to put out the money for something like that. But there are other applications. There are industrial applications, such as this person working at a Volvo factory on a door. Lowe's stores, a retail environment where they put some virtual appliances on top of a drab kitchen so that people can see what their kitchen would look like if they bought at at Lowe's. And we had an educational, this was Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where they're having a class where an instructor is teaching about bones here. So industrial, commercial, and educational are three areas that I think are going to be the early markets for the HoloLens. And so if you're developing for the HoloLens, you might want to look into those three markets: industrial, commercial, and educational. My personal idea is educational. Of course, that might have something to do with the fact that I have an educational background. But there was an interesting thing that happened last year, actually before the commercial release to developers of the HoloLens product. There was an early release to selected institutions, and one of those institutions was Clackamas Community College in Oregon. And they put on a series of courses, development courses, at Oregon Storyboard in Portland. And I attended those classes as a student and as a participant. And here's an, what we did was we designed a hologram of an automatic transmission for an automotive shop class at the college. And here you can see one disassembled floating in the air above my messy table with my old ancient monitor there on the right. But you can see that the transmission has been partitioned into several parts. And I have an animation, a brief animation, which I can show here. Hang on. I hope it works. So imagine you're wearing a HoloLens and you can walk all the way around that thing. Here, I'll play it again. And you can watch the clutches being thrown in there and then the various metallic parts.
Alan, sorry, I'm going to ask you to speak into the mic for the guys that are...
Yeah, the guys that are listening in. I'm just describing that little animation. Well, that's all for that. Okay, so there's that transmission, and you could actually, blow it up and walk right inside it, which I did before I took this picture, and the other picture were taken through my HoloLens, by the way. This one I didn't take. This is a jet engine that Japan Airlines, in their maintenance crew training, they created a holographic jet engine, which is amazing in its detail. And here, once again, is the Carnegie Mellon folks that are teaching medicine. Well, looking at the internals of the HoloLens, it has 3 processors, a CPU, a GPU, and an HPU, a holographic processing unit, and you can see them in the upper part of this slide there. It has 2 gigabytes of RAM, 16 gigabytes of flash, 6 cameras, and in addition a light intensity sensor, and then the light field engine there, which directs the holographic image into the wearer's eyes. You get sound, 360-degree surround sound through these speakers right above the wearer's ears. And the cool thing about that is, if you have a hologram anywhere in a 360-degree radius there, the sound seems to be coming from whichever angle it's at. And if it's farther away, it's fainter, and if it comes closer, it gets louder. So it really helps with the illusion of reality. There are 4 microphones, which are used for voice commands and also to pick up ambient sound, which gets fed into the earphones. There's Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, Cortana. Okay, what do you need? In order to be a developer for the HoloLens, these are the minimum requirements that you need. You need a development PC of some sort. It has to have a CPU with 4 or more cores. It has to have at least 8 gigabytes of RAM. The BIOS has to have hardware-assisted virtualization, second-level address translation, data execution prevention, 64-bit Windows, mixed reality. They just changed the name from holographic to mixed reality. And a GPU with DirectX 11.0 and WDDM 1.2. Well, just about any computer that you would buy right now that has 4 or more cores and 8 gigabytes of RAM, it will also have this other stuff. And you want to run 64-bit Windows 10 on it, and you can't use the Home Edition, but any of the editions higher than that will support it. And you need Unity, and it just so happens that there's a free version of Unity that you can use. Unity is the development software tool. You need Visual Studio, but you can use the Community Edition, which is also free. And there's an emulator, a HoloLens emulator, included with the version of Unity that supports holographic computing. So you don't actually have to have an actual HoloLens to develop for HoloLens. If you happen to be financially challenged and you don't have the $3,000, you don't need it. All you need is the stuff that I just showed you on the previous slides, including the free Unity and the free version of Visual Studio, and you can start developing for the HoloLens. Now, of course, if you're using the emulator, it's not going to give you the full experience of being able to walk all the way around the hologram, but you'll at least be able to debug your program, and then when you do get a HoloLens, you can port it to the HoloLens and play it there. So, if this guy looks like you, if you've got a relatively minimal background in software development, in my case, yeah, I've had a career in software development, but not particularly in the game area, not particularly in the graphics area, and you don't really need those expertises. If you know just about any computer language and can program in it, you can do HoloLens development. They recommend C#, and so if you have some expertise in any language that's at all similar to C#, if you've coded in practically anything, you can translate that knowledge over to C#. This is a screen from Unity, and you can see it's kind of gamey, but that's the user interface. That's what you use to create your holographic apps. And one way to interact, one way that your users can interact with a hologram is with gaze. If they look at something, that can trigger a behavior or an action. Another way is gesture. You can use the famous HoloLens gesture here like these astronauts are doing on the space station, and that will create a behavior. And you can also use voice. You can say something like select all. Actually, you could say anything you want. You're the programmer, you write the program, and so you're the one that decides what gets said. Now what we see here is the mapping of this room taking place with all those triangles. This is, once again, talking about the fact of the sound. You can see that the person is playing RoboRaid here, and the sound of that laser blast coming from the hologram seems to be coming from the direction of the hologram. And if there's a robot monster behind you, it'll make noise back there, and you'll turn around and engage it with combat. This is the spatial mapping. When you are in an area, you can walk around the area looking up and down and all around so that it builds up a three-dimensional map of the area. And you can see here, this is a house with several rooms that have all been mapped. And the person wearing the HoloLens has walked around, and it has remembered all the places that he or she has been. This is one of the first demo apps that they give you, that Microsoft gives you. It's called Origami. And it's a cool one because you can create the various objects in the thing, and you can see there's a couple of holographic balls up floating in the air. And they're floating in the air because gravity has not been turned on for them. But you can give them a voice command, or you can give them a finger click, and that would, for instance, turn gravity on, and then they would fall onto the virtual notebook there, and they would roll off it and down to the floor. Not only can you have virtual objects bouncing off of or rolling off of other virtual objects, but you can also have them bouncing off of or rolling off of real objects in the room after you have mapped it with that spatial mapping. So here we see a couple of virtual people there, one of which is a woman sitting on a real couch. So you have a virtual woman sitting on a real couch there. This is these are the tools available in Unity, and you can see under assets there's something called Holo Toolkit, which is an extra thing that is in the developer kit, Holo Toolkit, and it's got all of these tools for you. You can see that there are folders for editors, input, materials, models, plugins, prefab, shaders, sharing, spatial mapping. So all of these are components, and utilities and tests. All of those are components that you can add to your own programs. So you can just drop them in, and you'll drop in functionality into your program. That helps a tremendous amount, rather than having to build everything from scratch. Of course, if you like to build things from scratch, you certainly can do that. But if one of these pre-built assets works for you, why not use it? Once you have built an app, you can upload it to the Microsoft Store and make it available to the world. You could also market it yourself any way you want to, but probably putting it on the Microsoft Store is a good idea, because I don't know about you, but if I were looking for HoloLens apps, where would I look? I'd look at the Microsoft Store. First place people will look. Okay, my book describes, besides describing a bunch of things about the HoloLens itself, I go through a couple of applications where I develop first a simple application, and then, well, first of all, I run you through the demo apps that Microsoft provides, like Origami, and some of the other ones too. But after you've gone through those and you've built up a certain level of proficiency, then you might want to write your own code. I assume you do. And so I developed a simple app, and I developed a more complex app, and the code for all the code for those apps is on GitHub, as shown here. So you can use that in conjunction with the book. And I brought some books that are available for purchase at a 30% discount if you'd like to. There's, for a limited time, that secret code there, Taylor 30, will give you the discount. I also brought some vouchers for my video course, Getting Started with Microsoft Power BI, at a 50% discount. Now that one is from O'Reilly. The book is from A-Press. And I also, for anyone that is interested in SQL at all, I've got an SQL cheat sheet and an SQL injection attack tutorial. And anybody that would like me to send you those, I'll be happy to do that. All I need is your name and email address, and I can do that. So, Dwayne, I think that's all I have right now. That's it.
Thank you, Alan. I'm going to open up, if you're willing and able,
Sure.
I'm going to open up questions from the audience. I'm sure they have some dev questions or experience questions that might be able to tap into and answer for them.
Yeah, sure.
What's the approval process like for the Microsoft Store?
Okay, what's the approval? The gentleman asked, what's the approval process for the Microsoft Store? Well, I don't know. You know, you send it up, and they either approve it or they don't. And hopefully, if they don't, they tell you why they didn't. I haven't experienced a rejection, so I don't know. Yes, sir.
Have you had a student go through your book, like where he was like really new, like didn't know any coding or whatever, basic level coding, go through your book and develop an app of his own?
Okay. I interpret your question to mean if a person is really inexperienced, could they develop a HoloLens app with my book?
Right.
Yes. That is my audience. My claim to fame is writing SQL for dummies. And I've written, I don't even know, I've lost count of the number of dummies books that I've written, actually. So I know what it's like to be a novice. And in fact, I know what it's like to be below the dummies book level, because I teach online courses where the people are below that level. So I would say you need some familiarity with the Microsoft interface, the same interface that's on Microsoft Word and Microsoft Excel and Microsoft Visual Studio. If you know your way around in Microsoft, then yes, you can develop apps with my book.
So you said that there is an emulator that ships with the dev kit, essentially,
Yes.
for the HoloLens. So my question to you is this: usually, in my experience, the simulators are pretty poor. Is it good? Can you rely on the simulator to do development? Does it reproduce the same bugs?
Okay. I interpret that question as, is the emulator really good? Well, there are some issues with it, okay? Not so much issues with the emulator, but issues with the process. Now, I mentioned that you would develop your hologram in Unity, and then you would give it code in Visual Studio. So there's an interface there, and I think they've done a fantastic job of smoothing that interface, of flowing back and forth, and stuff flows back from Unity to Visual Studio and from Visual Studio to Unity. But it's a little bit flaky. And so there are going to be occasions where you have done everything right, and you click the thing to have the next thing happen, and it doesn't. And then you click the thing again without changing anything, and this time it works. So there's a little bit of inconsistency there, a little bit of flakiness. But once you get it into the emulator, you can, number one, see what the hologram you've created looks like, and how it looks in the emulator, that's how it looks in the HoloLens. And you can move around a little bit. It's a little bit awkward, because you can't just walk around the hologram like you can with a HoloLens, because you're looking at the screen. But you can push buttons, and that'll change the perspective for you and give you an idea. So I'm glad you asked that, because I think it is important, particularly for the gentleman that asked, if you're a ranked beginner, can you do this? Yes, but it takes some patience, and it takes some stick-to-itiveness. We're at version 1.0, right? And so there's going to be some challenges, but they're definitely surmountable challenges. Here in the front. Oh, back first.
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to add to that, to your question about the simulator. Simulator is good for what it is, but you have to have a real device to actually know how your experience is going to play out. There's no getting around it. You can never ship something to the store without that, right?
You couldn't ship it.
And furthermore, you can't even really do a very good job with a real HoloLens experience without the device. The simulator is great for developing and getting things going, but you've got to be testing it in the real device.
Yeah, thank you for that. I didn't want to imply that you could ship something to the store without a HoloLens.
I'll add, though, that Mike is also a UX expert and specialist, and his world is all about UX. So that's also the passion behind that.
Yeah.
How do you feel about the gesture system in Windows holographic as it is right now? Do you feel like it's reliable enough? Are there enough options? Do you feel like some applications need you to program different gesture systems than what's available by default?
Okay, thank you. The gentleman asked about gestures. The gesture, there's a relatively limited repertoire of gestures, right? And they work once a user has learned how to do them. So you learn to do this and not this. Once a user has learned how to do it, they work great. But it is a limited repertoire. And I would hope that there would be more gestures coming out, maybe from some of the people that are sitting here can write the code for some additional gestures. But I could certainly use some more.
What issues did you run into when you were doing the spatial mapping in the house? Looks like you did a couple of rooms. Did you run into any complications?
Okay, the gentleman asked, what issues did I run into in spatial mapping in the house? I really didn't have any problem with spatial mapping in the house. I did have a little problem, which was just me. But for instance, that exploded automatic transmission that I showed you. Do you remember the slide that showed that it was above a cluttered desk? It would have been nice if I'd had a nice velvety black background instead of that cluttered desk. But the first time I created that particular hologram in my office, that's where it was, above my cluttered desk. And then ever after that, whenever I launched that particular app again, it would show up in my office above the cluttered desk rather than anywhere else. So I don't know, I'm sure there's probably an easy fix for that, but I didn't find it before I shot that picture for you.
Yeah, I wanted to follow on with that question about the gestures, and particularly the resolution of the gestures. And the example situation might be going to that anatomy course at Carnegie Mellon. So let's say I had a body, a cadaver, and I wanted to do some, like pull it apart. Could I go in, is the resolution good enough that I could, for example, pinch a hair, pull the hair up, and see the skin move, and then peel the skin back, and drill into the muscles? Would that be, is that reasonable at this point?
That, not at this point, no. If I wanted to do that, rather than waiting for the gestures to catch up with that capability, I would create an individual voice command for each one of those actions and do it that way.
And I did recently play with a new game from the HoloLens store called Operation. Do you remember the game when you were a kid where they had the parts in there? It's a primitive version of it, but if you get a chance to try that out, you'll get a very quick idea as to how limited the 3D spatial movement of the hand gestures would be for that kind of purpose.
So I've got another question about the spatial mapping. How well does that export out to other programs, and what sort of technology are they using format-wise with that?
Good question. I never exported it, so I don't know.
Okay.
Do you talk about any other software in your book other than you mentioned Unity and Windows 10?
Well, there's Unity and Visual Studio. It's just C# programming with Visual Studio. That's all it is. And with the graphics part using Unity. As far as I know at this time, this is the recommended tool set from Microsoft. And you can't really use something else like the Unreal Engine, for instance. Although, you know, that might eventually happen.
Any other questions? Got 10 minutes till pizza arrives. So maybe we can open it up. Oh, sorry, do you have another question, Carol?
Pizza's coming right now. Oh, I don't get the price.
I'm interested in. Check, check. Check, check. All right. I'm interested in knowing, with all the other AR and VR platforms you've seen over the last couple of years, obviously it may be too early to tell, but from your gut intuition, do you see in like 3 or 4 years time HoloLens being kind of the primary platform you see taking off, or maybe is there another AR VR mixed reality thing that you see kind of taking market dominance at this time?
Okay, the question is, HoloLens going to dominate? Is somebody else going to come in and eat their lunch?
Yes, sir.
I think there's going to be a spread of capabilities, and the HoloLens is at the top. It's the premium product. There are going to be things that you can do with it that you won't be able to do with these other things that are coming out, because they're going to try and hit a price point well below $3,000. and you get what you pay for. So there'll be devices where you can get, this device will have this part of the HoloLens experience, and this device will have that part of the HoloLens experience, and this device over here will have this other part of the HoloLens experience. But I don't think that there'll be anything that puts it all together. And if that does happen, Microsoft will have such a big lead that it won't make economic sense to, I don't think it makes economic sense to go after Microsoft. So there'll be room in the market for these other things, but they will be addressing different audiences with different applications, different needs.
Gotcha, thank you.
So my question would be, is it possible to design a program in such a way that it can be targeted at these multiple platforms?
Can an application be targeted at multiple platforms? Well, I mean, sure, that's conceivable. But will it happen? I don't think so. Because the code is specific to the Microsoft HoloLens. There's someone in the back there.
I'll precursor that with Windows holographic platform will allow you to put it on multiple devices in some sense. Don?
Yeah, I was just going to follow up on that and say that we have an application that was built with Unity that essentially the exact same thing runs on Vive and Rift and HoloLens and Cardboard and etc. And the trick is not the technical challenges of can you share, it's you fundamentally want to interact differently with a AR experience than you want to interact with a VR experience, than you want to interact with a Google Cardboard experience. So it's much more a design space problem than a technical space problem.
Thank you for that comment. Very appropriate.
Is there anything that you learned after publishing your book that you wish you had included in your book?
That's always a good question. Not really, no.
Good answer. Okay, I'm going to roll then. Thank you very much, Alan. I'm going to roll into the wrap-up section of the meeting since the pizza is now here and we're ready to feed you. But before we feed you, we're going to talk about a couple of quick things. We have a member discount page, so anybody who's a WinHUGR member should go check out that page. There's still a leftover Christmas surprise there from one of our sponsors that can get you some free video or books. Check that out at the top. I haven't got it mentioned here. But all of our partners or our sponsors that do offer discounts to the group, the discount codes are all listed on that member-only page. And Unity, I mentioned earlier that the Vision VR AR Summit is coming up. Unity offers significant super early bird discounts that are about to expire shortly. So if you don't make the registration in time for the super early bird, I'm not encouraging you to postpone your registration because you still have to get a hotel and airfare and all those other things. But if you find yourself at the last minute or later on looking to go to that conference, our members get that super early bird discount pricing right up to the very last minute. So there's a special code on there for members online that you should check out.
We had one more question from the audience.
Oh, and we had a question for that. Is it from Alan?
Yep.
Ken asks, what would you like to see changed in the next version of the HoloLens?
What would I like to see changed in the next version of the HoloLens? Well, I'd like a wider field of view.
Sure.
I'd like the bugs to be worked out of the tool chain, where when you do everything right, it actually works the first time. So those would be the two things that jump to the top of my mind.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, online folks, for that question. The next slide is a general thank you to all of our sponsors. Our sponsors really do help make these meetings happen. Unity and Microsoft HoloLens team both back us up in a variety of important and special ways. Orange Studios, the place that you're sitting in tonight, is a collaborative workspace, and there are usually coupons at the door. If you're interested in one, you can come check out this space during business hours for a free one-day session. We can certainly get you a coupon for that. Route 3 is our pizza sponsor. They've been wonderful and been providing us pizza month after month. Leap Motion, Wiley, Pearson, O'Reilly, A-Press, and our last month's speaker left us a number of door prizes as well. So the fourth transformation book. So speaking of door prizes, let's get right to that. I'm going to ask everyone to pull out the ticket that they got at the door, and I'm going to ask Chris to wind down the streaming since this doesn't apply to